welcome back to Website Critiques with Bryan and Chris. I'm Bryan Capricci. This is Chris Bowman. And this is part 3 of this website critique with Raf Nogel. In the part 1, we talked about his homepage and content there. In part 2, we started talking about his portfolio. And now we're going to go into some of the content on Raf's website. And I think one of the things that it's just important to say now, because it's something that I see a lot of photographers do on their website, it's this idea of understanding your audience. Like, who is it you're talking to on your website? And if you don't have a clear understanding of that, then you're never going to be able to design your content, write your marketing, do any of your messaging with that person in mind, because you don't have a clear understanding of who they are. And so the biggest line that I often see photographers sort of straddling is this this back and forth between talking to their clients, or a potential client, and talking to other photographers. You have to think, at least I would think, on your website, you want to be talking to potential clients if you're looking to be booking photography jobs.
Yeah.
Right. If you're like us, that we teach photographers, then obviously that is different, because we want to be talking to photographers, guys, because that's who we want to be reaching and talking to. But you should make that distinction. I don't think you can properly talk to both of them at the same time.
Yeah, there's a reason why, if you're looking through a magazine, if you're talking to people at trade shows, if you're having a sales meeting with a different professional of a different industry, say, for example, like a roofer or something like that, is they craft what they're saying and how they're saying it based on the audience, right? And there's a reason why you don't, when you're flipping through a magazine, you don't see, the same advertisement talking, say it's a car ad, you don't see it, here's the person that might be buying a car, and here's the auto body people, that what they need to know about the car. You don't see it in the same ad, and there's a really big reason for that, is because there's an audience that ad is speaking to, and it's being, right? So,
Totally.
Yeah. So where are you going with this?
Yeah, so I have no idea. When it comes to Raf's website, so one of the things we talked about in the last episode is his portfolio, right? So you kind of come here, and I think you can click here, yeah. So you can see his portfolio here, right? And he's got this, next and previous arrow, which is great. But he's got this little down arrow, which isn't super obvious to me, so I'd want to make that a bit more obvious. But when you click down to it, he has a little narrative for the image, which I think is great.
Yeah, I love it.
It builds more context, right, for the image. It kind of gives the story behind it. But my challenge in how Raf is doing this specifically here, which is where the whole message and audience bit came in, is he's talking to photographers in a lot of this. He's talking about gear, he's talking about technique, he's talking about settings, lighting. And if you're talking to your client, they don't care about any of those things. They're going to look at this and be completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Be completely, it looks like gibberish to them. They don't know what 1/2500th of a second is.
Yeah.
And he's got that on a lot of the images where you kind of go down. It's like there's the technique again. So you're going to start to train your clients that that's what that part of it is about. Because the neat thing is that on some of them, he doesn't. So Raf's got some just nice stories here. But if you get your clients that are coming here and they're getting used to the fact that you're talking about technique in these little blurbs down below, they're going to stop clicking that bottom button, because they're just going to assume that it's going to be mostly technique there.
Yep. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So I love the idea, and I said, I'd want to make that more obvious. I love the idea of building context for an image before the image comes up, because I think that it gives you a chance to tell a story and frame the image so that you have some level of pre-framing when the image comes up. There's actually a whole book written on this topic. It's called Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. It's a I don't think maybe I have it up here. I don't know if I do. I don't have it up here. It's a beast of a book though. It is just thick. I think there's a Cole's Notes version on Amazon if you want to grab it, but it's a great book to understand the psychology of how and why people buy, and this idea of framing purchasing decisions, or by changing perspective, totally changes your mindset going into something. Like, for example, he talks about how this mattress company were testing on their website. The only thing they changed was on the homepage. They started with a background picture of clouds, and all the the content was in front of the clouds, and then they changed it to a texture of a building or something like that. And they literally proved through split testing that the clouds converted some crazy amount higher, because they pre-suaded, they kind of framed all the content to be fluffy and light and airy and cloudy, and just that small pre-framing totally changed people's perspectives when looking for mattresses on the website.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So what does all that mean? Well, just put clouds in the background of your website and you're good to go. No, don't do that. But basically, what I mean to say by saying all that is when you can tell a story and build some context before you show an image, which I think what Raf's trying to do here on a lot of these is like, okay, this is talking about this moment. I actually love the idea of telling that story before the person views the image, and that way they haven't made their mind up on anything to do with the image yet. So you tell the story and then show the image. So I'm just wondering, another way to do this would be, instead of having it as like a caption down below, what if you actually had the picture sort of blurred out and then the story overlaid on top of it? That way they were almost in a way forced to read the story, and then when they click next, that story kind of fades away, the image sharpens up, and there's the image. And it kind of is this back and forth storytelling sort of
For
feel.
sure. And you have that like profound kind of exactly.
And it builds up
that
the
experience, right?
too,
That's
right?
really cool.
Yeah. A photographer that does this really well is Rob Jinks. So shout out to Rob here. But he basically, here on his wedding stories section, he kind of like builds up this little story, and I actually love how he's done it, where it's like it's not this big massive paragraph, so it's very digestible, and you feel like you're leaning into it and you're reading it, and then boom, there's the image. It kind of sharpens up at the end. So I would encourage Raf to think about something like that, because I think that he's got some great images with some great stories. I would just encourage you to think about how can you get that story in front of people before they've made their mind about the image, because otherwise, when I come here, I'm going to look at the picture, I'm going to make up my mind, I'm going to make some assumptions, and then I might read the story. But at that point, I already have my mind made up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know. I agree. It's funny. Like, I think everything we've been talking about this episode, there's a big takeaway, and I think that's about crafting a guided experience for your users or for your potential customers, right?
Yep.
And going ahead and making sure that you are framing things properly and running people through. I think when we talk, it's funny when people talk about websites and stuff and different things that people are doing and what excites them, you always hear the word trend, right? So it's like, oh, the latest trend is there's no drop shadows, and the latest trend is big, beautiful imagery and big text and things like that. But I think the real trend that we need to start looking at isn't necessarily a trend because it's the latest and greatest, but instead it's about like a natural evolution of the web. And that's the fact that, when people first started building websites, we looked at, okay, we're just going to put a bunch of links, people are going to click around, there's going to be a bunch of imagery, and that's fine. Where now I think the real trend, the real emerging trend that's effective is these crafted experiences on the web, guiding people through. The web is such a powerful place to be able to do that, right? And to actually bring people through this almost like interactive commercial. And I think that's how you should be thinking about your website.
I love it. Speaking of that, I want to just quickly jump to Raf's pricing site to kind of wrap up this segment. And again, if we talk about crafting the experience, Raf's sort of, and a lot of photographers do this, where they basically just dump everything there. And my main challenge to this is that you're not leaving anything to be desired. There's no real reason that someone would even want to get in touch with you now, because they have everything they need. So the only reason that they would ever get in touch with you is to book you as a photographer, because they basically can come here, get all your pricing, they put it in their spreadsheet, and now they're comparing you to every other photographer. So just an encouragement to Raf is to maybe consider putting something like a starting at price on your website, as opposed to like giving them the entire, takeout menu type of thing. And that's pretty much it for this sort of 3-segment series for Raf's website. I hope that you enjoyed it. Raf, thank you so much for submitting your website. If you'd like to have your website critiqued as well, send us a direct message, give us your link, and we'll add it to the end of the queue.